Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison Barnes, and if you're a fantasy lover like me, you're going to really love to meet our special guest, just like I have. I'm talking with Erin Swan. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I kind of grew up all over the country. I was born in a really small town in Oregon. And then my dad joined the Air Force. And so I grew up moving everywhere, California, Florida, Hawaii. But Texas is what I call home. Texas is where my dad retired and I graduated high school. Then I came out here to Utah to go to college. And I have since gotten married. I have a 3-year-old daughter. And so Utah's where I live now, though my heart is still in Texas. I do freelance marketing writing in addition to writing my novels. And yeah, Bright Star was my first published book. So just really getting started on my official author journey recently.
Wow. So, guys, she's Tor Publishing. It's a traditional publisher, right?
Yes, they're a traditional publisher. They are the science fiction fantasy branch for Macmillan Publishing.
Oh, yeah, because I've heard about them a lot on Writing Excuses, because that's a sci-fi fantasy fiction podcast. So Erin is my first traditionally published author. A lot of the authors that I've worked with are indie authors or hybrid published.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have to have an agent to publish through Tor?
Yes, Tor does require an agent. I found my agent an interesting way. I actually had Bright Star posted online, and someone told me there's a new story sharing website called Inkitt. You should post your story there too. And I was like, okay, why not? So I did, and it turned out that Inkitt, they were brand new at the time. They were, their goal was to help unknown authors get published. And they have this whole algorithm that analyzes reader behavior. And they said, your story is doing really well on our website, and we'd like to be your agent and help you get published. So they picked up Bright Star and they took it to a big book fair in Germany for me and got me my contract with Tor. So yeah, my agent found me. I got really lucky.
You didn't have to go through the querying channels like a lot of authors.
I didn't. I got so lucky I didn't have to do that. Yeah, I didn't have to do all the querying and stuff with Bright Star.
So what inspired you to become a writer?
I've always had a love of reading and a love of stories. I think my dad was probably the biggest influence for me for wanting to be a writer. My dad would tell us bedtime stories as little kids, me and my sisters, and he would just make them up like on the spot. He told us these stories about Bobby and Billy Bunny, and he would just make up these adventures right on the fly. And so I think that really influenced me a lot. And then in school, I had an assignment in 5th grade where we had to write a story with our vocabulary words. And that was the first time I'd written a story, and I just loved it. I ended up writing like a whole series of little adventures with me and my best friend every time we had to write a story with our vocabulary words. And I just took to it and never wanted to stop.
Oh, wow. I bet that was fun. That's those adventure stories sound like fun.
Yeah.
Do you still read a lot today?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always reading like at least 2 books at a time. I usually have an audiobook that I listen to when working out and walking my dog and doing chores, and then an ebook or physical book that I read when I have downtime. So yeah, I'm constantly reading at least 2 books at a time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 because I've got like my audiobooks on Audible. I just found this Chartbooks app I got an audiobook deal on that, and for one of the books on that app on my iPad. I have this other app for the visually impaired. I've got a book that I'm about to ready to start on that. Plus, I've got several ebooks in the works. So
Yeah.
sound like me. So is fantasy the only genre that you're working in, or are you planning on doing some other?
Currently, my current projects and ideas are all in the fantasy genre. In the past, I've written, just kind of more general teen romance type books and stuff like that. None of those are published. This was back when I was doing a lot of fiction press posting.
Mhm.
So I could see myself branching back out into more general and teen romance fiction. But for now, I'm working almost exclusively in YA fantasy.
Oh, I bet that is fun to write.
It's so much fun.
I've actually started writing a fantasy. I'm kind of editing other books and editing a couple other books in a series, and then I want to get back to that. But you're inspiring me with mine.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So glad, yes. And so what inspired this particular book?
So with Bright Star, it's kind of funny. I actually wrote what's kind of a prequel. It's unpublished, but a different story that kind of acts as a prequel to Bright Star. And I wrote that. That was my first time writing fantasy. And I was really inspired by, some other Dragon Rider fantasies that I'd read, like Dragon Riders of Pern and Aragon, those kinds of books. And so I tried my own, and I wrote a whole story, posted on Fiction Press, and people started asking me, because in the Bright Star world, dragons and riders have to meet within a few hours of the dragon hatching, or they can't be bonded. And someone asked me on Fiction Press, they said, what would happen if a dragon and rider who were destined to be bonded didn't meet in those first few hours, but they met later? Like, could they be bonded? What would that be like? And so it really got me thinking about what that relationship would be like destined to be bonded at the soul, basically, but never happened. So that just really got me thinking about what that would be like. And so I started writing Bright Star based on someone else's questions about a different story. So it was actually really a reader that inspired me to write Bright Star. And additionally, at the time I was writing Bright Star, I was going through a phase where I felt kind of invisible. I felt like I didn't have a voice, like I wasn't being heard, and I was having a hard time finding my own worth and finding my voice. And so when I wrote Bright Star, that was the journey I wanted Andra to go on, was the journey I was going on of finding that inner voice and inner strength and that sense of worth. And so that was also kind of an inspiration for me, was my own journey. And that kind of inspired the more internal adventure that she goes on.
Did you draw a map, or did you have a map or any type of idea like that in your world building, or did you just do the world building as you wrote the story?
I kind of did the world building as I wrote that initial prequel. So I do have like a kind of general sketch that I use to as a point of reference when I am writing in that world. So, I mean, obviously there's not a map in the book. I don't have an official map for Parolia as it is, but I do have, my own references.
Yeah. But I think for me, I don't know about for anybody else, but for me, especially, I'm totally immersed in that world and I can follow the journey. So the question here is, are you going to get the prequel published?
That remains to be seen. It's not currently under contract, so that's just something that we're kind of waiting and seeing what happens with Bright Star. If Bright Star does well, the hope is that we'll do a couple of sequels. I have a couple of sequel stories in mind, and then backtrack and publish the prequel, which is called The Rising Sun, as a prequel to the series. Wow. So we'll see what happens.
I love fantasy, can you tell?
Yeah.
Fantasy, and I love mystery. So, and so far in this book, you've kind of got these two together.
A woman after my own heart. I love those two.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So, so what are you currently working on right now?
Right now, I'm actually working on an unrelated project. I do have the first sequel to Bright Stars. I have part of that written, but I've kind of put it on the back burner for now. I had another project idea I couldn't ignore. It's called 4 and 20 Blackbirds. It's another fantasy, but it's based in a completely different world. It's an unrelated project. So I've been having a lot of fun working in a new world, building another one. So that's been exciting.
Oh, I bet. So tell me a little bit about your freelance writing business. How do you find clients and that kind of thing?
Oh, well, I studied English and got a minor in editing and ended up working several years ago full-time as an editor at a search engine optimization company. And so that's kind of how I got into that branch of marketing and writing blogs and stuff like that. So when I left full-time work to have my daughter, I started doing freelance writing for that same company. And, I just loved it. I loved being able to work on my own time and do as much work as I felt like doing. And so um, most of my other clients, I've picked up several more I have found through personal connections. It's amazing. Once people find out that you do those kinds of things, you'll be amazed at who needs that kind of service. So I had a friend who started a business, and so I write blogs for his business. I write blogs for the CPA firms that my husband works for. So mostly personal connections is how I find my clients. And I found a few online through freelancing websites, but most of them have come through friends and family connections. And it's been great. I love working from home.
So is accounting your niche?
It's my husband's niche. I'm not a big accounting person, but you do enough research, you can kind of write about anything. And I do use his knowledge a lot as a reference point. So he's my resource anytime I do those accounting blogs.
Oh, okay. Because I didn't know if you had a specific niche or if you've done different niche. Because I've done some freelance myself, and I've done several niches, but there are certain ones. If you get into technical, I don't know how you feel about this, but if you get into technical freelance stuff, to me, you're talking technical, chemical, stuff like that. You're talking over my head. Physics is fascinating, but chemical stuff, yeah, you're talking over my head.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Yeah. I can't do the super technical stuff either, because just the amount of research required, and like you said, it just goes over my head. But I mean, like I said, having my husband as the resource for the accounting ones makes it a lot easier. And he's really good about sending me links to articles for the topic that he wants me to write on. So he makes it a lot easier. So I do a lot of accounting blogs, but I've written on makeup and granite countertops and plumbing and all kinds of different things. So
yeah, have you ever done anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Have you ever done anything on environmental safety, gardening, stuff like that?
Yeah, I've done a few on environmental stuff. Yeah, I'm like, what was that one client? It's like water cleanup kind of thing, and disaster cleanup and environmental impact and things like that. So kind of touch on a little bit of everything.
But I'm sure the fiction is more fun.
Oh yeah.
But
fiction is a lot.
Yeah, but I have done some freelance. I don't know if you found them, but I found some freelance stuff to be fun. I found some freelance articles that were fun to write too.
Yeah, some are fun to write, like especially when you get to pick your topics, or you get to write. I love picking up ones when they're about like animals. I love doing pet blogs and things like that. I also like to pick up a lot of parenting blogs. So I'm like, I can research a topic that's helpful to me, like how to get your toddler to listen better and write a blog about it. So those are fun.
Oh boy, just wait till she turns 10. Oh goodness. I've got one turns 11 on Saturday, so.
Oh, well, happy early birthday to her.
I will tell her you said that. Anyway, so we just got off from fiction to freelance to a lot of other things. Have you ever done landing pages before?
Yeah, I've done website writing as well, landing pages, service pages, all pages of a website basically.
Or the fun ones are the ones where you can you have an outline, but yet you can get creative too. So now I'm going to ask you another fun question. If you could have a conversation with or be educated by anybody, past or present, who would that be and why?
I think for me, the person that I would most like to be taught by would probably be Brandon Sanderson.
Oh, Writing Excuses podcast.
There are a few reasons for it. First of all, he was the writer who really helped me to rediscover my love of fantasy. I got into fantasy in high school and then kind of moved away from it in college, and then found Brandon Sanderson, and ever since then I've read almost nothing but fantasy. But as a writer, his world building and magic system building is astounding. When I read his books, I feel like almost overwhelmed by how good his world building is. And so if I could be taught by him how to do what he does as well as he does, that would be life-changing to me. Learning to be able to build those incredibly deep worlds and those incredibly complex magic systems that still make sense. Like, I would love to learn from him.
Wow. And you know what? It's funny you mentioned that, because this year on Writing Excuses, that's one of the topics that they're talking about is world building.
Really?
He did it. Him, and it's like Brandon Sanderson, Mary Robinette Kowal, Dan Wells, and Howard Taylor. And sometimes they'll have guest hosts, either substituting for one of the hosts or hosting with one of the hosts. And that's one of the things that I think this past Sunday was Altered History.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you might want to check that one out. I'm serious.
Sounds like I need to.
Yeah, you're going to learn a lot from that, and that goes for anybody writing sci-fi and fantasy. You're going to learn a lot from that. Last year was... I'm sorry?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I said last year was character development.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a great one. It sounds like a good resource.
Oh yeah, very good. I listened to that. It's like I stopped and started for a while, and now I listen to it practically every Sunday because they have such great information, and they're so funny too.
I need to start doing that. I'm not a big podcast listener. I like to listen to audiobooks instead of podcasts, but that sounds like when I need to look up and start listening to.
Their motto, although sometimes they're a little longer than 15 minutes, their motto is 15 minutes long because you're in a hurry and we're not that smart.
That's awesome.
Right. Yes, I give kudos to that one because that was one of the first writing podcasts I found. So where can people find you online?
I am on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is usually the best place to find me, though. I'm not great at social media, and Twitter's kind of the only one that I am super good at posting on regularly.
That's where we met, actually, through the writing community.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to actually engage with me, Twitter is the best place.
All right. And, of course, you have your Wix site, too. Do you have your own blog, by the way?
There is a blog on that website, but I haven't been great at doing it, so I don't have a regular blog that I keep up with right now, sadly.
Well, okay, but still, I mean, it's really cool. You know, I was just curious because I blog myself, and when I look at when I interview guests like this, I like to see, you know, blogs or maybe videos or something like that to kind of get to know the person I'm interviewing. But this was different, but that's okay. So, do you have a tip or a challenge or a writing challenge you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Really, the best tip I can ever give is to just write for yourself. I went through a phase where I thought I could write for a publisher, write what I thought a publisher would want to see, and that made writing so much harder. It made it practically impossible for me. So really just the best challenge that I can give is to remember to write for yourself, to find joy in it. Because when you find joy in what you're writing, when you love what you're writing, it's so much more enjoyable to read. People can tell when you don't love what you've written. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. So we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys, and have a blessed day.